We will start our Monday, May 16th school board workshop. Please rise for a moment of silence followed by the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we have one public input card this morning. Mrs. Cronin?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Board members, I'm not sure how you expect me to have public input on staffing plan when I just received it. I looked last week, wasn't there. I looked Friday night, wasn't there. Looked over the weekend, wasn't there. Looked this morning when I get up, it wasn't there. So I think I would like to reserve my public input for the end of this meeting in case I have any other additional things to add. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so with that, we'll start the district staffing plan.
So this is our annual meeting to review the proposed staffing plan, and Mr. Farnsworth will start us off this morning with some opening general comments, and then as we have done in the past, we'll have some of our department heads come up and share some of the changes and recommendations for their department. So, Mr. Farnsworth.
Good morning, board, and welcome, Superintendent, Mr. Johnson. Just a reminder that usually annually we do not post the presentation to the workshop early because we want you guys to be able to see it at the same time as everybody else for the first time. And when it goes to the board for full approval for a week from now, then there's time for people to weigh in and for people to take a look at it. But this goes out a week ago. You guys are getting nothing but phone calls on things you don't have a whole lot of background or knowledge about prior to today's presentation. So this gives everybody in the room a fair shot to take a look at what the recommendations are going to be prior to being approved, and everything, whatever changes come down the pipe from you guys' recommendation, based on our recommendations to you today, will go up and be posted on the regular agenda this afternoon. So today's presentation, you'll see some recommended changes, and the staffing plan, excuse me. So directly after today, there will be an executive session after the workshop, and this will also give you guys a chance to consider how we'll approach bargaining and compensation for all of our employee groups prior to approval of the staffing plan a week from now also. So that way we know what our direction is based on whatever restructuring, decreases, increases are recommended for the district level staffing plan. That can be weighed against the ideas we have moving forward with our employee groups. You'll see in our presentation there'll be positions added, deleted. You'll see fiscal impact and funding source. As you know, we try to, anytime we can have fiscal impact, we like those to be from under other funding sources other than the general fund, but you'll see what weighs against the general fund and what weighs against other projects. You'll see some restructuring. That's based on, as you know, we've got increased capital projects on the horizon. We've got increased workload for mandates and also considering growth. And that being said, I'm going to hand it over to the superintendent so she can start with her section of today's presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Farnsworth, and I'll just reiterate that as we're looking at the funding sources, just remember as we think about collective bargaining, again, the executive sessions to follow this meeting, whenever possible, we always look for alternative funding sources, and that those funding sources are not funds for which can be bargained, and so you're always looking at the general fund category, and again, we try to limit that to reserve the largest amount of general fund monies for those bargaining groups. But there are some impacts to the general fund, so I'll explain those, and those who follow will explain their changes as well. So as we go to the first slide, and I'm hoping the presentation is, so there we go. So we're on the first slide. We'll each start with our review of our own department. So one of the changes that you'll see, and at the very end, I will give you the organizational chart so that you can see the total restructuring. work. We've done a lot of deleting and restructuring in the past as a way to reduce cost and a growing time in our school district. Certainly, you'll see that there are need and justification for some changes to that restructuring. So one of the things that you'll see, first of all, is a position that has always been in my department, and that is an admin on special assignment. This is a position that has always been in the staffing plan. Sometimes it is used, sometimes it is not, but it is always there in the event that we have an administrator who needs some additional time with the district, usually someone who was with us just for a temporary basis. So we do have one school principal that will be with us just until October, so that is the portion of that individual salary, and they will be filling a vacant position up until the point that they retire in October. One of the changes that we made is probably where I spend the majority of my time these days is working with our school safety department. We know that this is a major priority for us as we must ensure the safety and security of all of our school campuses, our staff and students. And so I have moved the school safety department directly under my purview because of the time that I spend engaged with both Mr. Palmer and with Mr. Mabry, who are now direct reports to me. So what you see there are those positions that were previously under our operations department have been moved under me. You'll see a decrease as you look down that slide in the manager position. That's because Mr. Palmer will be moving to a part-time position. And so there's some savings in that position. We use those savings and disperse that back out across that department, including changing Mr. Mabry's position from the district safety and security state reporting specialist. That was a very long title. Moving him to the supervisor of safety and security services. That department has grown tremendously since its inception in response to the Marjory Stoneman Douglas Act. And so there are a number of direct reports for Mr. Mabry. Between him and Mr. Palmer, they're overseeing all of our school safety officers, and they're managing all of the contracts and contacts with each of our municipalities, the Lake County Sheriff's Department, which is about 60 officers in total, in addition to the there's 19 guardian positions. They also have the audio-video group, the technicians for school safety and security that are also direct reports to Mr. Mabry. Previously, as a specialist, he was not able to conduct evaluations for these folks, so that would fall to me to do. And so I'm asking that we change the title of that position. There is a slight increase to that position because it's moving from a manager or from a specialist to a supervisor. However, remember there was overall cost savings due to the decrease in the manager position. And then they are asking for an addition to the audio-video technical support, as well as one school safety security technician position. And so I'll ask Mr. Mabry to come up, and I don't know, Mr. Henke's coming with him as well, to talk about the rationale and why we might need 2 additional folks in that department.
Thank you, Superintendent. Board. As the superintendent mentioned, there has been tremendous growth with the responsibility of safety and security since 2018 with the Marjory Stoneman Douglas Act. So the department has continued to morph and grow. The statutory requirements have increased and will continue to increase. And so with the addition of the 2 positions, Mr. Henke will speak to the rationale behind that, that, you know, it leads to increased workload for his group. So I'll let Mr. Henke speak to that specifically.
Good morning. So one of the primary drivers behind that is just the breadth of what we've done. When we first began, we just had some security cameras that we managed, and that was about it. Everything that falls under my team now engages with, we manage our own behavioral threat assessment system for all of the school evaluations for that. We do all the visitor management at every school and all the computers for that. Our network that we've built alongside of ITs to try and take a lot of our traffic for the cameras and other devices off of their system has put us in the position where we have hundreds and hundreds of networking devices that we also manage alongside IT and work in conjunction with them to maintain. We're a little over 3,500 cameras in our system now. We will, over the next 2 years, be adding approximately 600 additional badge access, electronic door-controlled portals in the district, which gives us the ability to better secure the campuses. We have less keys in circulation, less chance of those getting lost, and it gives us a lot of backup for who went through this door, when did this occur. As a result of the depth and the breadth of our department expansion, we, a lot of weeks, have to decide, like, okay, we have this large project we're working on for the state grant to add all of these doors. If I put my team there, the work orders from the schools, I don't really have any staffing left to address those issues, and so we end up ping-ponging back and forth. The goal through this is that I am able to have somebody who specializes in the classroom audiovisual side of this and can always be on work orders, also always be going out and addressing the needs at the schools. As IT rolls out more and more of their new classroom devices for engagement, we help to support the audio video side of that, managing when they're having issues with the interaction of it, when the sound stops working. We go out and we troubleshoot those because that's our specialty, and that lets them focus on the things that they specialize in. So we just have, and then the other thing is that we have a lot of cameras. When we initially started our camera updates several years back, we focused on the elementaries and a couple of middle schools initially. And as a result, those cameras, which were a 3-year warranty device, so they're expected to last 3 to 5 years, are now on years 6 and 7 of being installed. And we're starting to see more and more of those going offline. So over the course of the next year to year and a half, we're also going to be having to do a large-scale project to replace approximately 1,350 cameras on top of all of the other projects they're working on for the state grants and maintaining all of the educational environments in the district as it relates to audio-video. So the plan is that we gain one additional technician who can always be running work orders as it relates to wiring, as it relates to the door controls, and then I have one person who I can always have on the audio-video side so that we maintain a high level of service for the schools as it relates to the educational environments, while also maintaining and expanding these systems as we bring more and more of them online.
Okay, great. Like it got quiet.
There was a total of 2 previously, so they're looking to add one. That'll give them 3, and then the other one was the safety and security technician 1. There were 5, and they want to increase those to 6. You'll see that those are all charged to our .75 millage, with the exception of the audio-visual one, but because they, that one was a little bit harder to directly relate back to school safety and security, so we felt to be fully transparent, that one needed to be charged to general, but that was the only one that was in addition.
Okay. Board, did you guys have questions? Is everybody good with them? All right, thank you, gentlemen, very much.
I've got a question in this category, but not safety and security.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so new school opening, normally we take the principal and put them on special assignment too. I was wondering, does that fall here or is that someplace different?
I think can somebody help me with that, where we put that position? Because you're right, it had been here previously. Needs to be added,
Okay.
yeah. We didn't know if we'd already set up a cost center specifically to Aurelia Cole and assigned it there, was my thought. But hearing nothing from the crowd.
Okay.
We do need to increase that. So if Ms. Collins is here today, so she will add that on there. We will change the fiscal impact on that one. So thank you for that. Yes, good catch.
When will that start?
So that position actually will start July 1st. And yes.
Okay. Okay. Is that all? Great. Next.
Yeah, and next up is Mr. Ward. Talk about business services. The one thing that I did want you'll see this is a spoiler alert at the end, is when we came, his title was Chief Financial Officer. And then we moved all the positions to assistant superintendent positions. Well, we still keep calling him the Chief Financial Officer. And so for consistency's sake, he's asked we just go back to that Chief Financial Officer position. So you'll see a change. That's a job description or a title change only. There's no impact other than that you'll see it on the master plan a little differently.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Thank you.
Morning.
One of the other issues that we're going to be addressing today, and they'll probably speak a little bit more in detail about that, is some rearranging of our facilities department. And part of that rearrangement, they wanted to do some separation of duties for those people that are responsible for reviewing the contractors and what they're doing in their work. So you'll see that we're adding risk management department, we're adding a building code official, and we're also adding a inspector code compliance, which is moving from the facilities department. And so we're moving some positions into risk management so that they're being supervised by a different manager and also a different assistant superintendent or now CFO. So that there's some segregation in duties, but also you'll see that they're adding some positions in facilities also because of the additional projects that we have going on. If you look our staffing plan for our capital outlay projects, we haven't had that many major projects in the last few years. We started up with Aurelia Coal, and we're also doing multiple projects this year. So doing that, we see a need to add some additional people who are involved in the process and the day-to-day monitoring of the building of these projects. You'll also see in risk management, we added the environmental specialist. This one was included in our ESSER plan for ESSER 3 in the upcoming year. So this shouldn't be anything new to the board. We've already discussed this. This is just putting it on the plan for that grant. And then at the top, in finance department, you'll see manager, ERate, and FEMA management reporting. And you'll see the cost there is $83,000. This is a new position. This is a position that's going to assist the district in going through the ERate process and also going through any FEMA management reporting if necessary. And so the idea there is we cannot use the ERate money that they earn because a lot of times it's offsetting costs from capital. And it's capital related, and this person would have to come out of the general fund. But if you'll see some of the work that's been done in the past in ERate, we're receiving millions and millions of dollars worth of equipment, and this person would oversee that to ensure that we're getting that equipment and we're getting reimbursed.
I don't think. Can you guys hear us at all? Yes. Okay, so.
So I'll keep going. And then, just like in the last couple of projects in ERate, Mr. Weeks has been the person who's really been on point with that, and it's taking up a significant amount of his time. A lot of times when they ask for responses to questions from the ERate, they want it immediately. There's a time that we have to respond back to them. A lot of the process in ERate involves finance, so instead of putting an additional position under Mr. Weeks, we felt like it would be better to put it in the finance department, and we handled all the POs, we handled all of the invoices and reporting anyway. So we would work together and add that one position for the district.
You said as needed.
I'm sorry?
You said as needed, that the E-rate or the FEMA, like as that comes up, we would utilize that position?
Well, no, we will go ahead and hire that position. We're actively involved in several E-rate contracts right now, and that's been a difficult process. So we would add somebody immediately.
Okay, so it's not something that would have work some of the time and then not some of the time?
No, it would be a full-time position.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
okay.
Any questions on finance,
Do we need to
business
pause
services?
for a minute? I feel
Yes,
like it's-
so we've lost the ability to be able to live stream this, and so they're asking if we could stop for a minute so that they can reset and
5-minute
get
recess.
back online.
Go.
'Cause no one at home is able to hear us.
All right, Mr.
Okay.
Ward.
So we were wrapping up business services, so was there any question on business services?
Yeah, so I've got a question just on the long-term impact of the environmental specialist. Is that just there during the time of ESSER, or is that perceived to be a long-term position?
We were considering it to be a long-term position. It's something that's been growing in our district. It is a need. So as we're going through these projects, it has, in the past, it has fallen on the risk management department to kind of blend certain positions to cover it. And so we feel like we could better address our environmental issues if we had a full-time dedicated person.
Okay, so eventually, I guess, is that a general funded position, or is that a,
Yes, once ESSER goes away, it would go to general.
okay.
Okay, any questions? Any other questions? So now it's time for operations.
Did she hear you? Time for operations, superintendent?
We had one for
There.
food service. Did it go away?
Yeah, we're missing a slide. That's what I was looking at.
Oh, okay.
Something got moved. Give
Okay.
me 1 second.
Somehow it jumped down to the last one.
Oh, there it is. Yep,
Okay.
let me put it back where it goes.
Fun with Google Docs.
Can y'all
Oh.
scroll all the way to the last slide, please?
No, I'm moving it.
I think. One more. No, not there?
That's gone again.
It's cool. This is what happens when you're using Google Slide Deck with 7th graders. You're seeing it in action.
Okay, it's back there, okay. So go back to slide 4, please.
I'm missing
Hold
the,
on.
okay, there's that one. It's back where it belongs.
Perfect. Okay, we thought that since there was only one change here and it was a negative, it's a decrease, that I could play Chunky Chad for a few minutes. And so for human resources, we're now moving the food service department under human resources. And as food service being underneath human resources, the only change that they have is they have a retiring clerical assistant too, and they do not desire to fill that position. So it'll be an $18,929 savings when that comes up. So any questions about that?
To the human resources.
Yes. So it'll be food service under Chad's
Under-
departments.
Okay. Okay.
Any questions? Okay, thank you.
I did want to take an opportunity to introduce you to Mr. Rob Orr. I'm not sure if y'all have met him, but Lauren DeRitter retired back in December, and he was there in that department and assumed her position when she left. And so wanted you to put a name and face together. He is now over risk management, and he's been able to bring a new lens to this, and has really looked at working with Mr. Ward and others to make some changes there within operations to bring those 3 positions into that department. So, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Just happy to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to go to the next slide and Mr. Carr, and we have Ms. Randall on Zoom.
Good morning, Chair, board members. Steve, good to see you, buddy. Yeah, but just to kind of echo a little bit what Scott went into with regard to facilities. He pretty much gave the introduction on the amount of work that we're going to be doing with capital-funded projects as well as building 2 new schools. And I'd like to also tag team with Mr. Oyer as the superintendent just introduced. We're going to aggressively target this year a monitored response of all work orders as well as IAQs, indoor air quality. That's another reason for the indoor specialist. We've seen an increase where that's a concern with regard to rising health conditions in some of our buildings that are 30-plus years old, so we're getting out in front of that. You're already aware of some of the measures we've already taken with regard to pretreatment of our HVAC system, et cetera. Speaking of our HVAC system under the ESSER, as you can see here, we've added 4 duct cleaning specialists. So again, we're going to be more aggressive tying all of that into our IAQ. Our bus,
Can we get it back up on the screen?
Yeah, there we go.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, sir.
You didn't do anything.
Okay. And then we're adding a route manager. This was a position that was actually deleted about 6 years ago. That, as you all are aware of, the challenges that we have in the constant daily operations of mounting our bus, rerouting our bus routes. This will be adding an additional person to take off some of the pressure that Mr. Fender has in transportation. So with that, I would like, Kelly is online to talk more about facilities.
Mr.
and-
Carr, can I ask a quick question?
Yes, ma'am.
Similar to what Mr. Dodd asked, the ESSER funds, are we keeping those for HVAC duct cleaning specialist
That is
after
our,
ESSER?
that is our plan. That is our definite plan because of the rotation that we have on cleaning the schools. We're only going to be on, like, right now I'm targeting a 5-year rotation. So the plan right now is to assess that, to see how it goes, and then roll that into the general fund, after a 2-year period of time.
But it
Yes,
would be
ma'am.
the general fund, it wouldn't be capital?
It would be correct. It would be general fund. That would be
Okay.
correct at that time. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other questions? All right, with that, I'd like to bring, with the superintendent's permission, Kelly online.
Good morning, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. I can't see the presentation, so I'm
Neither
not
can
sure
we.
exactly where you're at.
So I'm sorry, Ms. Randall, we're on your introductory slide, which is the color-coded chart of the upcoming capital and capital improvement projects. So if you could go back to, we're looking, next slide, there we go. So we can hear you, and now they're looking at that beautiful color-coded chart.
Okay, so I originally started off listing all the projects that we were doing, and then kind of thought this was a better visual to show you exactly how aggressive our capital plan is over the next 5 years. This does not reflect the plan that we'll be looking at in July, but this is actually the one that you approved back in September. And anybody who does construction knows, a construction project is never discrete. It doesn't happen when the walls go up. There's a lot of pre-work that needs to happen during construction. There's a lot of overlap between design and the actual construction process. And then during that wrap-up period, there's usually a lot of billing work that still needs to be done. There's a lot of warranty work and, going back and looking at things that we've done and making sure that we hold the contractors accountable for what they do. And I would say that our facilities department over the last couple of years has done an amazing job with really not very many people. There's only 6 people on that staff, and they did 2 major projects over the last 2 years. But it's a pace that's not necessarily sustainable, and they're picking up more projects as we go. As Ms. Ford said earlier, we have Aurelia Cole is actually under construction, and then shortly we'll be starting 2 more brand new schools. So, and they're equivalent K-8, and then also Fruitland Park Elementary School. In addition, they'll be picking up the capital renewal projects from maintenance and also portable installations. So if you look at this slide, you kind of see how many projects we have going on and how many are going on at any given point and are in varying states. So I think I have told you, multiple times over the last couple of years as we go through the capital project that I'm concerned about their staffing levels and their ability to go ahead and continue to effectively build these projects. And so the proposals that we've made are ones that kind of address that staffing issue. And, even still, I think that there are some expansions that need to be made, and whether we contract out those additional positions in the future, or, we look at continuing to increase our staffing. That's a conversation to have as we add more projects. But the ones that we're proposing today, I think are kind of the minimum for them. But if you want to go to the next slide, it should be the proposal. So I'll let the superintendent talk about the executive director position, but really what we're proposing is there's one current project manager in facilities, We'd like to add a second project manager that would focus on those smaller projects, the capital renewal, the portable installations, and you know, that some of those projects, I'm sure everybody has an equivalent in their particular field, but small projects take a lot of time. They are time intensive, they tend to be more complicated. For capital renewal, you're looking at occupied campuses, and so there's a lot of coordination within the administration, making sure that the timing doesn't affect anything like testing windows, and just generally kind of walking through that, and they're all very specific to that campus. So, you know, we'd like to get somebody on board who can follow those processes, who becomes familiar with Lake County schools, understands how the school system works, is able to work with those administrators and make sure that everything's going well and making sure that those projects are as seamless as possible. And then we are also looking at adding a owner's construction rep, and that is a person who has basically the same qualifications as an inspector, but is looking at different things. Is looking at quality control, quality compliance, and making sure that we're getting the best possible project for our money. One of the things that, you know, really, we should always have somebody on site on a construction project, and with their current staffing, they haven't been able to do that. And so this is another one of those people who's able to be on site at multiple, at different projects at the appropriate time to make sure that we're monitoring the construction, that we're getting the meeting the standards that we want, and not just the minimum. And so I think this is a way to get some bang for our money, basically, and go ahead and have some quality projects. We have some really exciting things going on with our capital plan, and you know, I just think that the staffing level should reflect that.
So this addition of the project manager that she just spoke of will allow us to have one manager assigned to the large new construction projects, and then one that can be assigned to your smaller capital renewal projects and day-to-day maintenance projects that we have not had that oversight with just the one previously. So this is the department where we spent the majority of our time focusing on increasing efficiencies, knowing that 6 people who've been maintaining this department, we've now outgrown that. And needed to make some changes. So when you look at the overall org chart that I'll show you at the end, you will see an addition of an executive director over facilities and growth planning. This allows us to separate maintenance and facilities by having Mr. Carr over the entire department, all of them as he currently is, but being able to have those that are specifically focused on the maintenance side of the house, and then Ms. Randall, who I would be appointing to that position, overseeing all of our facilities work that she's been so instrumental and well-versed in. So you will see that position added. You'll see that most of these are, you see general/capital. That's because any work that is assigned to a specific project can be charged to capital outlay, so we will do that. But there might be a small portion of their time that they might be on doing something else. And so just for transparency's sake, there might be a small portion. I think Mr. Ward figured it about 80% of their salary will be charged to capital outlay. Could be greater than that, just depending on how much time they actually are engaged in that specific project. So any questions on that, I know Mr. Ward can answer for you, but I wanted to make sure that you knew that those were not all general funds, that the majority will be out of capital outlay.
Board members, do you have questions, comments?
I just have a question. So with Kelly moving over to support this, is she getting help in her department?
So I did not delete her position, and so there will be a vacant position in her department for which we can post.
Okay.
And that will be paid from what source?
It's currently being paid out of general fund, so it would just remain there. So it's no additional cost other than the additional cost is the executive director position, and that is out of general fund.
The fiscal impact we saw on the last slide for operations was $278,000. That doesn't include this stuff too, right? Each slide has had its own,
I believe that that is both of those. They were together and that they got moved around a little bit, so
okay,
that is the total.
oh, okay.
Yes.
Any other questions? I just want to reiterate, having been a little bit more closely involved this year with a specific project, that I am actually encouraged to see help in this department because of the rate that we are growing, and just knowing that maintenance has been an issue and trying to keep up with the amount of work orders and taking care of all of our schools, in addition to all the new construction and addition to the new projects. And we just put additional PE equipment and playground equipment on top of our 5-year capital plan, and so I'm encouraged by this slide. So,
I agree. I agree.
all right, next.
So next, we're moving on to teaching, learning, and leadership, and we have Ms. Cockcroft and Dr. Feltner.
Uh-oh.
You're gonna beat me?
Thank you. I'm good, thank you.
Good morning.
That was delicate.
I thought it might be good for me to start off the presentation, but also to share the airtime with my person who's replacing me. So I'm very happy about this, and so I thought it might be good for us to both do and talk about next year. So we're glad to be here, and we have a few changes that we'd like to talk about. The first one that we have in our department is 2 program specialists out of academic services and interventions. These 2 positions would only be filled pending the 21-22 school grades. And if any additional needs are there to monitor and to support any schools that may find themselves needing extra support by the state. And so we felt like we needed to go ahead and put it on the staffing plan and hold those positions just in case. Although we're hopeful and do not anticipate having to fill them, we felt like they needed to be there so that you would see that if we do need additional support, that it would already be approved. We also have the ELC assistant site coordinators. We are adding a few of those. 6.25 is what it comes out to be. Those are 7-hour positions. This allows for each ELC program to have an assistant. And in conversations with SEIU and ELC leads, this has been a concern for several years. So we felt like we were kind of riding the ship on this one. And then the last one on this slide is a program specialist for dual enrollment. And this person basically, one of their responsibilities, I thought you might find this very interesting, I know I did, is that they're going to teach a dual enrollment EMT class once a week. So not only are they a specialist, but they'll actually be with kids once a week. So the other 4 days, the class will be taught by adjuncts from Lake Tech. They also support the expansion of dual enrollment opportunities at Lake Tech and serves as a district contact for the career on the job training as well. So this position is written in the already approved dual enrollment grant that has already come through for approval. So I'm going to let Amy take over on this next piece in our department.
The next slide, please. All right, in the Curriculum Instruction Assessment Department, we are requesting 1 program specialist for media services. And this is in a response to House Bill 1467 that requires anyone who orders instructional materials be certified, in addition to the parental requirements that are coming from that bill and the new training from that bill. They would have to clean up a lot of Destiny, there's duplicates in there of books, and for the transparency of our list online that's required from that bill, they would also take care of that. We did consider another option for that as well, and that was some stipend work for our media specialists that would begin this summer to be able to do that work. However, we anticipate a large load, so we're not sure that they would be able to finish it in the summer, and then would they be willing to continue that work in the evenings once the school year starts. The occupational therapists are approved. The approved allocation for OTs is 60-1, and our average caseload right now is at 70. This does not include the coverage that we have at the pre-K center 1 day a week for evaluations, initial evaluations or reevaluations, and then the support for students with Section 504 plans. So the addition of these 2 OTs would bring the average to 60. And the physical therapist assistants, currently the allocation is 50-1. Our physical therapist has 81 students on the caseload, and this assistant would allow him to manage those 81 students with the support that he needed, and also provide a cost savings to the district in doing it that way. The speech pathologists, the allocation is 1 to 70, and many of our caseloads exceed this. Having these 3 positions, they would do the evaluations, complete the formal speech and/or language evaluations, would allow the school-based speech and language pathologists to focus on the interventions and students, the services that students need, to actually lessen that gap that we're seeing from the pandemic as well. And then the intensive support behavior itinerant teachers, these positions were approved on 124 through the IDEA and ARP grant approval. And this is due to an increased need for supporting students with behavioral needs that are resulting from the pandemic as well. These 3 teachers would be assigned by regions and work directly with classroom teachers to support them in these behaviors, the most significant behavioral needs that we're seeing there.
If you go to the next slide. So in federal programs, we are asking to increase a fiscal assistant for VPK. This position was approved in ESSER 3 due to our fact our VPK classrooms have increased from 20 to 40. And so it also includes 6 fee-based programs, which would require some more support in terms of managing those programs. You'll notice that there's a decrease of an early learning and kindergarten transition person, and that was a person who was retiring, so that's a position we've eliminated. And then in student services, we are asking to increase funding for the clinical therapists, to add 3 of those paid out of mental health dollars, and also a clerical assistant 2 paid out of title as well. And that clerical assistant would support the McKinney-Vento program, and that's the program for the homeless, and also would assist communication to support foster students moving in and out of county, and also communicating. We are seeing a rise in those 2, in homeless and in foster care, and so we're seeing an increased need for some support with that. So our net, you can see our net impact to the general fund. I want to just reiterate that over half of that is for those 2 program specialists that would support struggling schools, and it would also, the money from that would be allocated out of SAI, which is a pot of money that funds struggling schools and intervention. So the other half is what you're kind of looking at for general fund, and you can see the impact to other funding sources as well.
I have 2 questions, like a comment and a question, but we can't see the net impact to the general fund on the slide. So that's why when I was looking up there, I wasn't looking here, and I was like, well, there is no impact to the general fund, but there is.
Chairman Liu.
Yes, ma'am.
And we
Thank you.
I do apologize for that. I created the document and we did it in Google Docs or Google Slides, and then when we converted to PDF, things seem to have shifted.
Sure.
So if anybody needs to see, if you've got the printout, I printed
Yeah.
from Google Docs, so the net impact is shown on the printout. So if anybody in the audience would like to have one, you can see that.
Our net impact to the general fund is $319,482. And that's when, but if you look at the 2 program specialists are over 159, and so that takes care of over half of that. So considering it's a less amount than what it actually looks like, considering that those 2 program specialists are on hold until we get school grades, and it's funded by SAI.
So my second question is regarding the program specialist for the media services. I know that's a what if. I mean, it's a big what if. I know that there's been a lot of legislation, but I hate to put a position on this document with a what if question mark. What would they do when this list is finished, or whenever they've finished ordering? And I realize media specialists might have time over the summer, and that's a question about in the fall if they'd want to continue those services, but I hesitate anything to the general fund without knowing. So.
I do anticipate a large amount of work, and we have to continue to increase our online. Every material has to be posted online too for the media centers. I'm anticipating.
Can that be what the manager of instructional materials would do?
The manager of instructional materials, that media is a portion of their job. There is a whole other host of things that they have to do, and certainly they can support that as well. The ordering, the manager of instructional materials, though, has never had media certification, which is also a requirement of this law. So I think there are ways we can overcome that, though. I don't know that they have time in their day to do all of this, quite honestly. We can absolutely try that with the support of a stipend work. If you all are willing for me to then bring it back at a later time, if we can't get it done, that's my worry. And we're going to be out of compliance with the statute then.
I think my concern is just, in the last few weeks, we've seen how complicated the state has made curriculum for us with textbooks, and I mean, we've seen so many challenges come forward based on books we've got in this library, that library. I don't know, I almost think that it's just increasingly complex that I don't know how one person keeps up with it.
If that is such a complex position, why would we put a program specialist there anyway? So if we're talking about compliance with statutes and being held accountable for this person to maintain and manage all of the materials that we have in the district, I don't understand why we would put that in an instructional positions person's hands anyway. It seems to me like it's a bigger, like this, the manager is ultimately going to be responsible for that work, correct?
Right.
So they're going to have to oversee that anyway. And the way I understand the department's work anyway, there's already a lot of oversight with the executive director of curriculum and instruction, the director of professional learning, K-5 manager, K-6-12 manager, manager of instruction. Like, there's a lot of oversight anyway. And so I get what you're saying. I think there's a lot of hype politically around this conversation, but I think everybody in here knows our math textbooks have now been approved. Right? We are playing a political game, and I don't want to put a position on this plan reactively to a political game that's being played with education. I think if we talk about the manager of instructional materials, I would love to see, for me to support this position, I would love to see what they do for 12 months, because I know right now I can't imagine the amount of work that's on their plate, but what happens in November and December and January and February? I know that the curriculum department supports textbook adoption. I know there's work that supports that. I've seen Dr. Harris in this capacity at the events like the Steam Bowl and the Science Fair, and I know that department is so supportive of one another. But I just hate to put a position on here because of a political game or because of a what-if scenario. And I know that we spoke about opportunities for online support that Mr. Weeks is working for with parents to have some input on this list as well. So I know that we're all being reactionary to it, which is great for us to be prepared, but what if, and I'm happy to bring it back. You bring it back and let's look at it again if it's the amount of work is too much. But I have a problem somewhat with even the manager position in a textbook materials. I know that came from Tom, so there's some weird pieces, right? So that's where my heart lies here.
Yeah.
So
I can certainly understand that, but 31 of our schools have media specialists. The others do not. So we do have to, that ordering system is going to be heavy for the schools that do not have that certification as the law requires. There's also training that's required with that. So, I will proceed as you all see needed, but I do know that instructional materials position, even in, like, we're processing orders for all of the materials up through October, because you have to get all the packing slips and do all of that work. Science allocations come down, media allocations come down. Like, there is a lot of work, as well as the new adoption process that starts and those pieces with that. So something we'll have to give, but we would certainly work to make that successful for the district. I can see where, yes, the law went into place and we're reacting to that, but we have to be in compliance with that law. So we need to make sure that we're doing that in a way that is beneficial to our schools and our parents as well.
So in the absence of somebody at the district level who owns that certification, how would you order materials for these other schools who don't have a media specialist?
If we do the stipend route with the media specialists, we would have to hire media specialists to come in on their time off and create lists that we could order from. Then the media specialist would be in charge of those lists that we would be using.
If, for instance, East Ridge High School, let's say, doesn't have a media specialist, so they've got an ILS, so you would have a media specialist from another school, elementary or middle level maybe, I guess, come in.
I think we would have to
Right.
hire some high school media specialists to come in and help create that list and stipend that work.
I'm wondering if it might be wise to go ahead and approve the position, but freeze it, with the understanding that we will first reach out to our certified media specialist to see if there is an interest, whether or not they would apply for the position to receive the stipend, to be able to go ahead and start that work this summer. And if the work becomes more than what they can manage, we could let the board know that we need to unfreeze it, but that way it's there. And we can certainly, because we don't know at this point if we have media specialists that would be willing to work after hours to be able to place the orders and do the work needed.
I'm not in favor of that, but I don't.
How do you work after hours? If you have a full-time job, and then how do you do that?
Well, you should call any one of our program specialists because they do it all the time. I guess,
They're going to
so
work
that.
full-time at their job. and go
Mr.
to another
Mathias,
school?
absolutely. And I think that's what is frustrating. I hear you saying people have to work extra, and to be in compliance, but it's just, to me, it's so disingenuous. We have teachers that do it every single day, and custodians that do it every single, people do it every single day, and it's really unfortunate. And I love the fact that we're having a conversation about making sure that people have what they need to do their job, but let's be real. We can't, district-wide, are we doing that? Are we looking across every department and every position to ensure that everybody is equally feeling like I have support to do my job? I don't feel that way. And I don't feel that way in my current job. Let me just be clear, not this job. Not this job, sorry, I apologize. But I feel like everybody's being asked to do more, and everybody's doing it, and we're all to that point. But it's hard for me to even freeze a position. I don't want a position on here that's paid out of the general fund for a maybe or for a what if. We don't know what this is going to look like. And we are asking people to work outside of their hours and giving them stipends. This past year has been a lot of that. It's been overboard with that because we have the issues with filling positions.
I think it would be equivalent to our summer writing teams.
Right.
Ms. Luke, I think it would
Right.
be that kind of stipend work, because the question is, if we have 10 or so schools that don't have a media specialist and they cannot place an order for that school unless somebody is certified in media, that creates a hole. And so we would have to what Amy is proposing is that you'd put a team of media specialists together, wherever we don't have them. So if we don't have one at East Ridge High, you may ask the other high schools that do. I know Taverius High has one. So you might have a group come together, and then they would do the ordering for those other schools that don't have a media specialist. That's the workaround plan. Because we have to have books ordered for them. And so, that would be the
Can you speak to
challenge.
what books we're ordering, like this media specialists are ordering? I know, like, we're talking about what books. We're not talking about textbooks for
No,
media.
we were talking about library books.
Right.
So
it's
they have a
honestly-
library fund every year. They're funded an
Right.
allocation to order new books. And so those would need to be ordered, and then we'd also have to make sure that they're in Destiny. Right now, if you look in Destiny and you look up a book, there may be 4 entries because different people have entered it again. And so you might search it, but you have to search that there's 4 different entries of it instead of just one telling you every place it is. And so that's a cleanup. That's what she's talking about with the cleanup process. And so when you have all these media specialists entering in to Destiny, when they buy a new book, that's how you get these multiple entries. And so one of the responsibilities of either the committee or a program specialist would be to make sure that doesn't happen, so that when parents go on and to do the system that Mr. Weeks is working on, it cleans it up. So
And could I
that
ask
just kind of
that? It
explains
seems
the
to me-
after-hours work.
And it seems to me for the oversight, because of the new legislation, that if we had a group of media specialists come together with a manager to look at these lists and approve them ahead of time and then make them available, that would almost streamline the process than having 7 different high schools doing their own different things.
Yeah, that's what was coming to mind as we're explaining this, because I missed, it was only library books. So why wouldn't it be consistent across all the high schools? And so you'd only need a person, you know what I mean? Like, why do we need one at every school when you'd have all your middle schools, your high schools, and your elementaries? It seems like those libraries would be pretty consistent.
Well, their orders over the years have been placed by their media specialists, so they ask students in their building, they ask teachers in their building what is needed, so their inventory is varied across. I'm sure there's a lot of commonality, but there's also a variance based on, if one school has a bunch of students want books around this, and they might have more there. So they don't have the exact same inventory.
But in a
based on their
couple of
student
instances,
population.
we've gotten in trouble because a school ordered a book that wasn't on or had issues, let's just say that. So it seems like, I don't understand why it couldn't be consistent, and why we would need the position. I'm kind of moving.
So explain to Mr. Mathias, how would it be consistent if you don't have one person doing the ordering?
No, one person could do the ordering.
Well, that's the position
No.
person.
No.
No.
I'm not creating a new position.
Right.
And I'm not creating a position.
Okay.
But that if you have media specialists at all the schools, right? Let's say all the middle schools, except 2. Those middle schools, when they come together, they would fill the void for the 2 that don't. And it should be the same books. It was my head. It was where my head's at.
Could be.
Yeah.
There could be some of the same, but not every school, let's say a school is gonna order a bunch of books about raccoons. Not every school needs 12 books about raccoons that year, you know? Somebody might already have that in their library, and they say, hey, you know what, in the nonfiction section, we could really use some more books on historical events, so they order that. You know, so I think there's differences. And I guess the interesting thing here is that we're gonna be saying to these media specialists who already have full-time jobs at elementary and middle level and already receiving all these Chromebooks that they're already overworked on, now in addition to that, go order books for another school that's not even your own? I don't know, that's insulting.
But they're being paid to do it, though, right?
Yes. They are, and I think about the same type of, we do the same thing
No,
with
no, no,
curriculum
no,
as.
no, I don't know. It's, the answer is yes.
Yeah,
I heard
she
that
said
we are
summer
paying.
writing teams that
We're
we would
paying
pay for them.
Well, if we brought them together in the summer, like we were talking about, yes, they would be stipend for their work that they do. It would be an after-hours deal, because it's summertime work, and they don't necessarily aren't on contract.
So that's what you mean by
Stipend at the
after
rate.
hours. It's summer work.
It could be, but then in the fall, when they get their allocations, so in the fall, they'll get a new allocation for media books, for these books. We'd have to bring them back together after hours to be able to do the ordering for the other schools. So
And when
that's an after hours after their contracted day.
And when
And they
the-
get paid for it.
For my edification. So when if the books come in, and I just heard Mr. Dodd mention Chromebooks, which the media specialists are responsible for.
In many schools.
Not all, because not all of them don't have them, like we just talked about.
doesn't
Media
have-
specialists.
No, that's what I'm saying. When you don't have a media specialist, who takes care of the Chromebooks? Who takes care of the books when they physically come in and gets them checked in and to the library? Who does that?
We have a position called an innovative learning specialist, an ILS, that some schools are using that allocation instead of a media specialist.
Is it basically the same job?
It's the same job, but you do not have to have their certification. So until this law came about, that's who was doing kind of that dual role, being the technology person and the person who oversaw the library work.
So a school that doesn't have a media specialist has an ILS person?
Yes.
Yes.
And so you're just going to be changing the title?
We cannot change,
No.
No.
You would have someone certified, so that ILS person would go and this new person would come in?
No, they're not replacing them.
we're not replacing them, no.
So you're adding to it?
No, that's what they're saying. Where the void is, the school that doesn't have the media specialist.
But they have
that
an
has the
ILS.
They will not order their books. So one of these other schools will have to order the books for them, which is where they're proposing a new position to do that.
But why not move the ILS person and eliminate that one and go media specialist?
Because you would have to,
Well, that's principal's discretion.
It is.
But we're creating the position.
No. Right now, they get to pick. Do they want a media specialist?
I don't think, are you on?
I think I am.
Oh,
Can
yeah.
you hear me?
Okay, yeah,
They
I
get
can.
to choose. They can have one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
But I have a question. I think we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves. Do we know, first of all, if we have people out there who are interested in this extra work? Because I think that's the crux of it. I mean, we need to know if we have people that would want to do that. And I think people would decide that based on their personal preferences. We know teachers are always looking for part-time jobs, which might be an answer to that. But we also need to know that there's an interest for them to do it. I tend to feel similar to Mrs. Luke in that I don't really want to approve a position that's just sitting there. But if we don't have media specialists that are willing to, want to earn the extra money and order the books, then it's a moot point. I mean, we have to have people to do it. So I think, first of all, we need to know, are there people who want to do it? And is it enough? And do they have the credentials to be able to do it? And is it going to cause a problem? So if it doesn't, then certainly, Mrs. Luke may have offered a viable alternative. Otherwise, we need a certified media specialist to order the books.
Yes, and it is beyond ordering the books. The Destiny cleanup is quite a huge
Mrs. Cockcroft, is
undertaking
that,
as well.
but once it gets cleaned up though, so that's my thing, is that we don't need a full, we've talked about these general ESSER dollars going to general fund, like if, once our system, and it does sound like we need to look at, I mean, like, I'm excited that we're looking at it, and to your point about different schools wanting different things, I feel like we do this with curriculum maps, and we do this all the time. We do it with our 5-year capital plan. We look at the needs, which are great, and then we figure out how we're going to supply raccoons at this school this year and how we're going to do race cars at the school the next year. I just feel like once we get those things in place and cleaned up, I see the work now, but I don't know how the longevity of the work, and that is why I don't want to approve a position.
So maybe you approve it for a year and find out where you are at the end of the year. I mean, it seems like if you got to go in and clean, how many books do we have in Destiny?
Oh, gosh.
I don't know.
Just
I don't-
estimate, just for fun.
I
Price
have-
is right.
I couldn't even begin to estimate how many are. in this.
300,000,
Dwayne might
500,000. I mean, I don't know.
I have
More
no
than that.
idea.
There's gotta be more than
This
that.
seems beyond a couple of media specialists working for a couple of
It
weeks
will-
over summer.
Yes, it will be more, the summer would be the start of it. It would take longer than that.
But you're talking about the cleanup work.
You're talking cleanup work.
Right.
Which is part of the statute.
I understand that, but the statute doesn't require you to do it now. I mean, if they've got this, I get what you're saying. I saw your eyes like, oh, yes, they do. But realistically, they also want us to pay our teachers how much and pay people $15 an hour. Like, let's be honest. We have to have time to move a Titanic ship here. And I'm just saying, there's some, this conversation makes me very uncomfortable. Go ahead.
And it also seems like there's a technology component that when we're cleaning up Destiny,
Yes.
that would be in Mr. Weeks, which you could quickly cross-reference. I don't know that it's a year's worth of work, is it, to clean up?
So,
I mean, because
I don't know
everything
if he
is
agrees
in.
with your-
Yeah, I don't know that this falls under the technology
No,
department. I would not
but
say
you write a
that.
program, you run a check, and you boom, 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 and it comes out, print out,
But
you go
then,
pull
then
the
you actually
books.
have to go in and physically fix that.
Well, we should be
have-
inventorying the books anyway, I would assume, right?
Sure, but I think
are.
that they've spoke to, if this media specialist ordered this copy, and then this one ordered this copy, this one ordered this copy, now you suddenly got 3 copies in there because they didn't realize that maybe it was already in there or something, and now me as the parent, because based on the statute, I need to be able to go in and look at the contents of the library. I can't necessarily know to look in multiple places to find out if,
and beyond that,
And
the
beyond.
one listing might have the grade level that the book is recommended for, another listing might not. It might just have the Lexile level. So it is creating a protocol for those listings as well.
So we kicked it around a little
Well,
bit.
Yeah, so I guess we would
Yeah.
just like to know
Which
where we are and if you want it to remain on the staffing plan for Monday or if you would like it not to remain on the staffing plan for Monday.
I do not, but I would like, Mrs. Cunningham made a great point, if we could survey some interest, and I'd like to see the results of the interest survey rather than just being told.
I'm 100% leave it on.
I'm going with doing the survey.
I mean, you-
Seems like prudent to me.
So you want us to do a survey before Monday which is
If-
fine,
if-
we can. I
If you
mean,
don't get interest, then
And I
put
guess
it
I
on.
just don't even understand the urgency in regards to, why can't we, does it have to be on Monday night staffing plan? We're all sitting here saying we're open to hearing back from a position, so I understand approving a staffing plan and bringing it back if you find that there's nobody interested.
It blows my mind that we've got millions of dollars of positions here and we're picking on one instructional.
Yeah, but isn't that
One
our
instructional
job?
position.
Isn't that our job to do that, though?
Oh, absolutely. So let's make all these other summer people, let's only clean HVAC over summer, and let's see if some custodial wants to have overtime and do
We
that
do
for a couple
that.
weeks over summer.
We do, we do.
No, we created a whole position, or let's talk about, let's go back to.
It is sort of our job, though, Mr. Dodd, being fair. And
It's,
Yeah, it's our-
I know that it's personal,
I
Mr.
think we
Dodd,
need to
but
look
No,
on
it's-
opossums too, by
it's-
the way.
I
just
know
wanna
the
get that
work
out
of
there.
this department, and I think it's more than a couple of weeks. I know it's the media specialists who are saying, I already have a full-time job, and you've thrown Chromebooks over on top of me with no support for that. And now this board's gonna dump something else on them. It's not okay. It's not okay to keep doing that to people.
I don't think that's what we're doing.
That's not what we were saying at all.
But that's the plan. If we're not gonna have somebody to do the work, then who's gonna do it? It's
We
gonna
just
be
said
media
do a
specialists who are
survey.
gonna do the work for other schools.
Did you miss the part about do the survey? To see if they want to? I mean, you're saying they don't want to, but if, I don't even know what the stipend amount is. Is it enough that it would encourage someone, rather than a part-time job over the summer, would do this?
writing teams is
It'd be-
20 an hour, 25 an hour.
$20 an hour?
So less than an
No,
hourly
no,
rate to come
writing
do over.
teams is the hourly
It's
rate.
the
But,
hourly
well,
rate.
if they get a
Writing
summer
teams
job,
is
they're like,
the-
I'm making $20 an hour.
Writing times is their hourly
Hourly
wage,
rate.
Mrs. Cockcroft just said.
Oh, it's at their hourly rate? Okay. They're not gonna find a job in Lake County paying $20 or $25 an hour, just saying.
And we're just asking them if they want to do it.
What would you like the staffing plan to look like on Monday? with this, in terms of this line.
I feel comfortable enough in the two of y'all that if you did a quick survey, and nothing really official, make some phone calls. And if you can't get any interest, put it on the plan. If you get interest, then I think we don't put it on the plan. That's where I land.
Yeah. Thank you.
Did anybody else want to say anything?
Yeah, I
Oh,
agree.
y'all
I
said-
nodded.
Oh, okay.
This is kind of,
I was looking this way.
I'm good. I just think that before we decide that people are going to do something, we need to ask them.
Yeah.
And if there are people that want to do it, then certainly it needs to be offered to, I feel, present employees first.
I 100% agree.
Any other questions about our department?
How many people do you need to do this anyway?
We would need at least, probably 3.
Okay.
I'm thinking, only because I said elementary, middle, and high. I don't know that, but I'm just
But
saying,
we
that
have no
in my
idea
idea, I
how
need a
it's-
representative from each one, because we have different, at every level, there are some schools without a media specialist who have an ILS. That's why I say that. So
But an
I know-
ILS is the same, except without the certificate.
right.
That's correct, and they cannot order materials for their school.
So why don't you talk about that person reviewing the ILS person's recommendation and ordering it because they have the certificate? Is that right? Is that too simple?
I would do it the other way. I would create a list of books that the ILS could choose from, because if they have to go in and look at each book that the ILS is doing, because then they have to do each ILS list separate. So we could create an elementary.
Either way,
Yeah.
it's a matter of another person who's actually familiar with the school, to Mr. Dodd's point. He wants raccoons, I want opossums. And then the other person, because they're certified, would order.
Yes.
If I were a media specialist with a certificate, I'd take the stipend in a heartbeat and do it.
I appreciate you guys asking for interest and the conversation.
So we have 2 other positions that we put on there just in case. Does that mean we're going to take those out now also? Is that,
I thought those were the DA positions?
that was a just in case pending school grades?
Yeah, but, right, okay, if you want to bring those back with the other ones, that's fine too, because I know that we will have school grades coming out soon, and so we look at those school grades and we decide then.
But I think that's a little different,
I do
Mr.
too.
Dodd. We don't have an alternative way to take care of DA school. It's a little different.
I'm just saying that we've used the rationale of we don't want to have a position on here just in case, but we have 2 other positions on here just in case in the same section. So that's bad logic. It's fine if you want to use different logic, but don't use that argument of saying just in case when we've got 2 others.
The DA position the DA school recommendation isn't a new thing that we're adjusting to. We don't know what the workload's going to look like. We don't know what it's going to take. We don't have existing personnel that can do the work at the DA schools outside of their time if they so choose to do it. It's a completely different situation, but
But if you want to be logically consistent, I can support you saying
I
you
can
wanna
too.
take them
No,
out.
I don't want to
When
take them
we
out.
get-
I think they need to be
when
there. I
we
think
get
this
the
one needs to be
DA
there too, but
troops-
it's
right.
okay, I'm the minority. I clearly got it. I'm not going to beat the dead horse.
Yes, you are.
No, I'm not.
okay.
But
I'll
anyway.
come back and say I told you so in a few
But is
months.
is it not the same logic that we've said, if we don't have someone to do the work, then we will put in the position? The same is true if a school doesn't have the grade, then it creates the position. To me, those are completely homogeneous with what we're doing.
Okay, so why don't we go back and have our code official, instead of adding $106,435 there, why don't we just assign that to somebody else who's already in operations department, have them do that after hours?
Or outsource it. I did make.
Okay, I don't know.
I did make a note about
But
that.
we've added, I mean, I'm just saying that we've got all these other things, but when it starts touching kids and starts being instructional materials, we're like, oh no, let's see if we can pile more on
This
the
is-
teachers.
This
Because that's
is
what we're doing, right? We're piling more on those media specialists.
on the media specialist.
That's right. Who are our teachers? Who have already said these Chromebooks were crazy because here's the board shoving all these Chromebooks on us with no additional support for that, taking me out of teaching my class to manage all these Chromebooks, and now on top of that, we're gonna say, now order the books for another school.
It
That just sounds insulting.
Okay, it may sound insulting, but that isn't what we said.
But that's what we're doing.
No, it's not.
It
We
is
said-
100% what we're doing. We're saying we're gonna take.
Mr. Dodd, with all due respect, what we said was, if there aren't people to do it, then we're going to put the position in. Let's go ahead and see. I would much rather give money to one of my existing employees at Matthias for overtime work than to bring someone else in.
And it's consistent with what we've continued to do with both instructional and non-instructional personnel, or what we've advocated for, is to give them work when they wanted to do the work. And if they want people there to do the work, we're good.
I'm done. It's fine.
Are you
I'm
good with
I'm
the other
overruled.
positions then?
Yeah, I
Okay.
don't want to take those out.
Okay.
So my understanding is that the two positions in academic services interventions is staying on, and based on pending grades. This position we're surveying, and then if we can get if we can get a response back by Monday, we will either put it on or come back to you with results of the survey, correct?
Yes.
And then, and if not, if we don't get it back by Monday, just in case we don't have enough, we'll pull it off and bring it later. Is that what you're saying? When we
Yes.
do have the survey done?
Thank you.
Is that correct? All right, got it.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Weeks.
And our last department is Information and Instructional Technology Services. This department has, for quite some time, sat under curriculum and instruction, and I think you've seen Mr. Weeks before you a number of times and know that his work has spread well beyond just curriculum instruction, as his work touches every one of us every day. And so I'm proposing that we pull it out from teaching and learning and put it under me. So you'll see on the org chart, which will be the wrap-up slide in just a few minutes, that it is now a separate department under me, bringing back that chief of technology position and deleting the executive director position, and having Mr. Weeks serve as the chief of technology and data systems. So with that, he's going to go over some changes to his department that actually will result in a cost savings for us, so pretty much kind of a wash.
So thank you for the opportunity this morning. I kind of talk about the philosophy for just a second. We did try to basically re-engineer everything for the maximum amount of the maximum efficiency that we can have within our department. Technology changes all the time, and so positions that you may have created that may be 5-10 years old start to grow a little out of scope, if you get what I'm saying. And so with that scope increasing, or really maybe increasing is a weird word, it's morphed to some extent. We do have more devices, as was mentioned. We've got more of a demand on our network. And even some of the things that we're attempting to do to bring those efficiencies to the school, like the focused student information system conversion, where we're trying to get a system that really does do some more of the work through automation for our data entry clerks and our scheduling administrators and things like that. Because that has morphed, we kind of took a little bit of a different approach. One thing that I would like to kind of take the opportunity to really reinforce is the position of my brother Scott's line of work, which is that ERate consultant. Kind of talk about that for a second. That ERate is pretty intense, and this year we will get about $8 million back if it all makes. And of course, that is definitely an interesting process. I know this may come as a surprise to some people. The federal government can be a little cryptic and weird at some particular points as far as some of their processes. But those Chromebooks, those two huge Chromebook purchases that we made this year, one for $11,000 and then another for $8,000 for next school year that you recently authorized, we have filed for the emergency connectivity funding, and we would get 99 cents back on the dollar for both of those. That we got lucky. After I brought that last board item to you, they reopened the window, which was kind of a good luck, right? But with that said, it's a very intense process, and so really when you think about that position, that's a great way to leverage one position to where you may make lots of money back for the district that goes back into capital, honestly, potentially some of those projects, right? I will say this too, is if we look at the spreadsheet for a second, you will see the administrative assistant. That position we have kind of sunset. We have somebody who's been in there who has retired, and as a result, we've kind of sort of reworked our work to be able to get that to be covered by other people within our department. Even though Louise Parker, if you know her, she is an institution around here. She is a great asset. It's going to be hard imagining her not here because I think she knows nearly everybody. Probably one of the bigger changes that we made very specifically is that in IT, we have a lot of managers. And because of that, we don't really have much of a structure. And something that is really near and dear to my heart is always bringing the idea that you're going to leave something in a different shape or a better shape than when you got there. And one of the things is, from a continuity standpoint, I think it's very, very important to have people who are leading the work, not only just like as managers of processes, but leaders of people and the vision to go further. And I've got 3 that I'm bringing. I'm also sunsetting 3 manager positions, so I'll talk about that for a second. People who currently hold those positions, if you know David Hess, he has worked very, very hard, and he's been our instructional technology basically leader since I left. And so we've added that coordinator position because the instructional technology piece has gotten bigger. We have heard, and we are going to be bringing a pretty exciting project in the next little bit to hopefully streamline the repair and the reporting process on Chromebooks, because we're always looking to improve that. And as a result of that, he's led that work, and he is going to be leading the work with the tech cons as well, which is a big group of people. There's almost 500 tech cons across the district, and so he's going to be stepping it up. That, but also too, like as we've said, some of these projects that are coming fairly fast, like some of the curriculum changes and how we can best support that, we really feel like we need somebody there. The other one that I think is also important is that we have one that will be doing operations. As these capital projects unfurl, we are actually seeing an increase because every time we got to build a building, we got to build a network. And I'm going to tell you that is a real challenge that takes a lot of coordination between, well, I mean, supply chains, they're not easy right now. And on top of that, they've got a component with finance, with procurement, to make sure that we've got some compliance things going on, to make sure when we're placing the equipment in these new constructions that we're doing it appropriately. And so with that said, we see a huge growth in that, just as was predicted in some of the earlier slides. And then the other one, which is a big deal, is the student information systems and state reporting component. State reporting gets harder and harder. If you would have started it 20 years ago, it would have been a handbook about this big. It's probably 8 phone books at this particular point. And as a result of that, we are, like I said, going to the focused student information system away from Skyward. And so we are leading that work. That is effectively running 2 systems at once, because we're building one now. We're 11 weeks into it, and we've gotten pretty far. But that also means that we're still running Skyward because, well, Survey 5 doesn't stop for anybody. So with that said, those are some of the big changes. A fiscal assistant, I had a position that basically in-house that we repurposed just ever so slightly that deals with licensing and the management of that. We have like almost $500,000 in licenses, and you got to keep track of that stuff. And so we've just added that fiscal assistant, kind of some of those responsibilities to that person, because a lot of times it makes sense that they're the one negotiating with the vendor, that they just basically go ahead and put the PO and put the rec in. And so I think on the next slide, probably one of the last changes that I have to go over real quick is the addition of a security. Basically, in our security world, we've been growing a lot, and there's the addition of a Tech 2 position. That will give our security team a little bit of extra oomph as we start implementing some of these other products that we've brought to the board, in an attempt to make sure that we are trying to navigate those stormy waters, because cybersecurity is a big deal. So with that said, I think when it was all said and done, it doesn't say it there, but I think I gave you $4,000 back, which I'll probably ask for on computer screen, Chromebook screens at some particular point. But nonetheless, we were able to do it within the confines. I will say this is no, IT members were harmed in this process. All these positions are open positions currently, and so they're not being filled.
Okay. Board members, do you have questions?
Is the manager positions are being replaced with these, like from 94,000 going to 104?
Correct.
It's 1 for 1?
Yes.
So is there anything in this plan or I guess visionary that helps remove some of these Chromebook responsibilities off of the instructional staff who already has a full-time workload?
I think that's one of the things that we're constantly doing. We've actually met with the instructional staff probably 3 times, kind of a weird coincidence since the last talk. Basically with the tech cons one time, we met with the media specialist, and we have been working with them to support, obviously, the ongoing support. I think one of the plans that I will bring you in the next couple of board meetings or so will kind of sort of show how we plan on sort of upgrading that this year. I think one of the messages that we took to them is obviously they're not, and I want to make sure that I'm very clear on this, they're not actually responsible for the repair of the Chromebooks. It's basically just putting a work order in to make sure they get replaced. The repair is actually handled by our team, and a central location. So, yeah, of course, we're always looking for that, and I think one of the things that we'll bring to you in the next little bit really will streamline that quite a bit, but they are leading that work. That is correct. Like, I think one thing that's kind of important is that in technology, it's not enough just to stare what's in front of you. You're going to have to look to the horizon a little bit because it comes quick, right? Like, and luckily, you know, just as a concrete example, we had sort of the vision of bringing in an easy to manage device into the school district, and look, that literally saved us during the pandemic, right, and that initial crunch. So I think it is important for those people to lead that work and be scanning for the next technology, the next efficiency.
Yeah, and I guess not to downplay this idea that they're just putting in a work order, but so I attended one of the retirement parties around. Actually, there's been a few retirement parties this past week, but at one of those, I had an opportunity to talk to one of the media specialists at a school, and she talked about how it's challenging when you're teaching a class.
Very
and
true.
The kid comes in, and I've got a Chromebook that I need to replace now. Okay, I have to stop teaching my class. I'll put this Chromebook here. I'll try to remember later what the problem was. That way, when I come back in between classes, I can then do the work order for this Chromebook. And I think that's a unique challenge you get at the elementary level where the media specialists are teaching classes.
It's very true.
And so
I think that's one of the things that we're looking at. We do have some pretty radical ideas on how this could be potentially changed to some extent, and it is going to take us rethinking some things. But I will tell you, the elementary, especially with the teaching of classes, has been something that's been sort of near. Listen, it's extra work for anyone. I mean, if I'm being direct, I think it's just a matter of David's team. Probably more than any other team I've been able to see. They're a small team. They're a tiger team for the most part. Like, they're very agile. But with that said, they've been able to go out there and they've really been able to support. And I think that's what we're kind of starting to look to do, is how do we automate more of these processes? How do we streamline it? Because we are coming out of the initial crunch, or really past the crunch of the pandemic, and going one-to-one kind of unevenly. And so now, how do we make this sustainable? And I think you're going to see that a lot in our plans. But yes, that person is definitely working to support that work and build that relationship with the school-level tech cons and media specialist.
So this is a good conversation, and Mr. Dodd, maybe you can help me. So the media specialist, when you're mentioning the Chromebooks, it's handling the work order? That's all they do with the Chromebooks?
not necessarily. So because the work order sometimes takes a few minutes to do that, and they might say, look at this, oh, I know this is a 4-minute reset on some buttons. So sometimes they'll go ahead and do whatever the reset is on the Chromebook. But yeah, there's the work order. There's the changing it out. I got to check this one out of Destiny, check this one back into you in Destiny. Now, and all that's happening while you're teaching a class. You know, that somebody, maybe some 5th grader from a different class comes in and says, our Chromebook doesn't work, screen's broken, or I'm missing a charger, or I don't know. So then oftentimes it's the media specialist who is that contact.
And rather than, now superintendent, as I'm processing this, rather than it being a teacher media specialist, could it not be somebody in the office? It sounds very clerical to me.
So that's a great conversation, right? So one of the things we did when we met with the tech cons a few weeks ago is that we actually requested, maybe required, an administrator to come with the media specialist or the tech con who is working the Chromebooks. And one of the first things that we put out there as an idea is every school's got a little bit of a different layout as far as staff that's available, and how could you rewire that workflow to where maybe it does go to somebody in the front office who could do the checkout? Because you are correct, it is basically an online form. And so we were more than willing to bend our work order system to be able to give anybody that ability to be able to put those work orders in. And we did have those conversations. And to be honest with you, I think a lot of the administrators went back. We really wanted to emphasize to the administrators, who I know appreciate them, but sometimes unless you're in the work on a daily basis, and our media specialists do a great job of just doing it, but it was welling up on them in some cases. And so they did. Some of the administrators did really respond positively to that, and we'll see, as we start the next school year.
I didn't follow you. They were positive about someone at a lower level handling it?
At
the front desk?
Like an office level.
That's what it sounds like to me,
Yep.
very honestly.
That's where we were kind of coming from.
So they're not responsible for the inventory and the bringing the books in at the end of the year and all that business, the Chromebooks? At the end of the year, when kids turn them in, who they?
Well, generally it is,
the
a lot
media
of times the media specialist or the tech con, that part is very, very true. And so that collection process, but again, part of our reason we brought the tech cons in, unlike past years where we just got to the collection point to collect them in, and if you remember that first year, we didn't collect them at all because we kept them out over the summer. We did try to go to them and say, you need to pull a team together in order to support the media, like it can't just be the media specialist. You're going to need, because I mean, if you have hundreds of Chromebooks coming in.
Well,
it's
we had
gonna
some very
be a team.
specific recommendations from our internal auditor, how to handle the receiving and the stacking of these Chromebooks, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, as I reviewed that, I think as far as the stacking for sure and the
Yeah.
storage,
No,
but as far as the actual process.
No, not the process,
Yeah,
but how different schools handle them differently, where they store them, blah, blah, blah.
correct. And we did relay that to them in the meeting as well.
And so you're recommending that maybe it could be an office person?
I think there is the chance to find, again, because it's an online form, and even Destiny is an online form, we have built a reserve up of Chromebooks to where when you get one that's broken, you're not so strapped as far as supply goes that you have to process that Chromebook right now to get it in the mail to get one back because the kid is missing one. There is a healthy reserve, and if there's not, we can get them one. So it could literally be a Post-it note and a hot swap till somebody can do the work order.
So condensing it for me, the answer was yes.
Yep.
Well, I guess for me, it would be contingent on what that workload looks like for the office staff. Because I know I've shown up at some schools, and man, that office is like, they need roller skates
But
to just keep up.
if you approved a office staff person, that would be far less expensive. It seems like we're shooting a cannon at a BB function.
Yeah, I don't know that it needs to be instructional level to do that, but I don't know that at every school you need to hire a whole person just to handle Chromebooks. So, I mean, I don't.
That could, I mean, just running the numbers in my head, that could get expensive quick.
That would get
right?
very
Like,
expensive.
so-
You know, because I've got a school in my district who had, in your dashboard report, 7 Chromebook issues all year, versus another school who's reported 700 all year, so.
I 1,000% was trying to find some middle ground for you and I, just so you know.
I think to your point, every school is different.
Yes.
And the administrator is required, that comes under them. So I think if you, as you're doing, simply communicate with them and have them understand that this is a problem. Because like you said, you may have one school with 7 problems, you may have one with 700. So somebody's got a problem, somebody doesn't. So I don't know that we here in this room can solve and dictate how they choose to handle those. I would support you having those conversations with the powers that be and then having them come up with solutions that work for their individual sites.
Yeah, was some of the great byproduct of the meeting. Having the administrators in there, I think it really opened their eyes, and then they did work towards solutions, and we'll continue that conversation, for sure.
But then how do you address, Ms. Cunningham, to that teacher who's teaching and is obviously complaining about it or forgetting about it, as would happen to me if I was trying to teach and then somebody brought a Chromebook? It seems like there ought to be some consistency of how those are being processed. And the idea, again, of paying a teacher $25 an hour, where it really, in today's world, is really a $15 an hour.
I agree, and I think those administrators who know their building may come up with that solution, that there is a clerical person that could do it. I mean, it just depends, it's gonna vary. And we can't make a decision here that's gonna accommodate all of our buildings.
Oh, and I agree with that.
Any other questions for Mr. Weeks? Nope, thank you.
Just in case anyone's wondering, there's 640,591 books in the media center.
Oh,
I knew we could do that.
Thank you, Mr. Weeks.
I think that sounds like 2 people over the course of 2 weeks.
Okay. That was the last presentation? Oh, no.
That was the last one, and so the last slide is the organizational chart. It looks a little different. You'll see those title changes there. You'll see that the Chief of Technology and Data Systems has moved under the superintendent as well as the School Safety and Security Office. And other than that, there was pretty consistent as in years past. But those were the 2 major changes to the overall organizational chart. So, and that does conclude our presentation for today. We'll take any feedback. We made note of those already to bring back on Monday, and we'll be working on a survey. And any other changes or comments, we're happy to
I'm going to offer.
consider those as well.
If the board does purview is okay to honor Mrs. Cronin's request at her 3 minutes
Oh,
now?
of course.
Yeah. Mr. Dowd, are you going to, public input, so we'll do 3 minutes, is that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for the opportunity. I find it a little odd that we are adding new positions, doing some promotions in some of these areas where we're adding money and taking money from the general fund when we haven't even sat at the bargaining table. I heard Mr. Carr say that we needed another route manager because of all of the rerouting we're doing. If we have enough bus drivers, we won't be rerouting, right? So that's an issue. There's a lot of things we were very short-staffed this year. $15 an hour is going to bring you in some employees, but if other people aren't taken care of, you're going to lose a lot of employees. Right now morale is very low. They're not confident in seeing a significant pay raise. They tell me, bus drivers especially, they can go to Kroger, they can work for $18 an hour, they don't need a CDL. It's all over the place, I tell them to be patient. They feel as though you don't understand what they do, you don't appreciate what they do, and I try to tell them that you do. But you know what? Their pockets are empty right now. Everything is going up. We had bidding last week for bus driving. We called somebody to see if they would come. I don't have the gas today to drive in there. So we let her bid over the phone. But, why this takes priority over your current employees, I don't know. But that's where the money should be put first. And then if it's left over, go to other spots. So I've got a lot of questions on some of this, and when I get it all together, I'll try to get some answers done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Cronin. Board, was there other discussion in regards to the staffing plan?
Just kind of one of my observations that I want to go back and take a closer look at. The fiscal impact, I see including, or on other funding sources is $1.5 million. And I know that some of that is ESSER funding and that will eventually go away at the end of that time period. And then I guess my concern is that those are dollars in a couple of years that are going to be hitting the general fund. Plus, I see the general fund impact here as well. So, I certainly understand the rationale for many of these new positions. And I guess one thing I've just always said time and time again, there's always a good argument for this, but I always want to see the other piece of this in whole before you commit to this. I want to know really kind of what we're doing for the rest of our employees as well, before I'm willing to jump behind with support. But I think my other observation is just the process, and maybe we have, for whatever reason, not shown this plan or presentation ahead of time, but I think, at least from where I'm sitting at, it's helpful to me when other folks get a chance to see it, because oftentimes they'll call with questions, they'll call with comments ahead of time and go, oh, okay, that's a good question. I'll bring that up in the workshop so that way the board can have some discussion on that. I think that we've lost the benefit of that today because we're just now hearing from Ms. Cronin here, and some of these positions are LCEA as well. And if we're talking about a big chunk of our budget, it's staffing. This is huge. So for me, I don't know this is necessarily a show the public for a week and then move on, but I would have liked for them to take a look at this ahead of the workshop. I don't know if y'all feel the same way about it, but just from where I'm sitting at, I think it makes me a more effective board member when I can have some conversations ahead of time.
I don't disagree.
I agree.
Yeah.
Maybe we change that moving
Yeah.
forward.
We certainly can change that.
Okay.
Thanks.
Great.
That's it.
That's it?
That's it.
Okay. We are on board member comments.
No comments.
No comment?
I don't have any comments other than to say that I appreciate the work that went into this. I think that we all are concerned about the salaries of our employees, whether they're instructional or administrative or whatever. So certainly, I think we're all committed to giving them the most that we can. So I would hope that moving forward, starting with our executive session that's coming up, that, that's what we'll be focusing on. Thank you.
Yeah,
Mr. Dunn?
and just I kind of had a unique shifted my perspective this year is I always thought about this as the time of year for graduations and the new beginnings for our students and new chapters for them. But just the number of retirement parties in the last week with people who I have taught alongside and people who I've worked with, it just was a whole new level of becoming personal, at least from my viewpoint. And I thought, all these people going out in their new chapters, and so I wish all our employees the best that are retiring and that they get a much-needed breath of relief, because I know that they have, as I've gone to these things, they've described the last few years and how hard these last few years have been. I think it just speaks volumes for the work that we do, that these people would want to sacrifice so much to be part of that, impacting the lives of kids. And hope they enjoy it, and to all the graduates, best of luck in your next chapter too.
Yeah, it's a fun week. Thank you, Mr. Dial. I just reiterate that. It's a fun week. Got a lot of good graduations happening this week, and a lot of students
tomorrow.
celebrating starting tomorrow night, right? So hang in there. Everybody that's crossing the finish line slowly, it's happening. Thank you. Superintendent?
Well, I too just want to extend my congratulations to the class of 2022. We'll all be out and about over the next several evenings attending graduations. And I did want to I think you mentioned a while back in the morning that all of our math textbooks from our elementary up to Algebra 2 have all been approved by the state. They're all, whatever changes need to be made have been made. They are approved, so we'll get those orders done and moving forward with that. So we're glad to see that that's been taken care of.
It's big.
So.
Yep. All right. Mr. Johnson? Okay, we do have executive session after this, so meeting adjourned.